Welcome to Let's Talk, a live Q&A on navigating diabetes consultations. I am Anna Richardson, a broadcaster, journalist and passionate advocate for health and wellbeing. I've spent much of my career helping people feel informed, supported and in control of their choices. So tonight's topic is one that I care deeply about. I live with prediabetes and, like many of you, I know what it's like to feel unsure, anxious or even unheard. So we're creating a space for open conversation about how to get more out of your consultations, whether you're someone living with diabetes or a healthcare professional supporting those who do. We've brought together a brilliant panel to help us do just that. Experts with both lived and professional experience. I have Dr. Emma Wilnut, who is a consultant diabetologist in Derby and is an associate professor at the University of Nottingham. She's also the founder of Diabetes Technology Forum and brings a wealth of experience and compassionate insight into what patients should know and ask when navigating specialist care. Sue Down is a nurse consultant in diabetes and the clinical lead for Somerset's Diabetes Service. Sue offers a wealth of insight from her experience of designing, evolving and improving diabetes services. We're also joined tonight by two powerful voices from the community. We have Daniel Newman. He lives with type 1 diabetes and is a multi-award-winning diabetes advocate. He's passionate about fair access to diabetes care and technology, as well as improving representation of ethnic minorities. And finally, we have Catherine Robinson, who lives with type 2 diabetes and is here to share her experience of navigating consultations, asking the right questions and learning to advocate for her own care. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Meanwhile, we've been collecting your questions from across the country. Thank you to those of you who submitted one. And tonight, we'll be putting those questions to our expert panel. Don't worry if you didn't get a chance to send your question in advance. You can still submit one using the tab on the right of your screen, and we'll do our very best to answer as many as we can throughout the hour. And just a quick reminder, we can't answer individual medical or product-specific questions, and we ask that, of course, everybody keeps things respectful and supportive in the chat. Thank you. OK, so let's start with something that many of us find tricky, knowing what to say in the room. Time with your doctor or nurse is precious, we know that, but knowing what to ask and how to make the most of that time isn't always easy. So we're going to focus on a few of the questions that we received in advance, which reflect some of the most common challenges around consultations. I'll open each one up to different members of the panel so that we can get different perspectives. OK, so Emma, I'm going to be starting with you first on this one. If I can just ask you, what kinds of questions do you find most helpful from your perspective as a consultant? So the questions that you find most helpful for you.
So my dream come true is that somebody walks into the room and feels 100% comfortable just opening up the conversation with the things that are important to them. That would be the ideal.
Wow, and how often does that happen?
In my clinics.
All the time.
No, but I live with type 1 diabetes myself, and having been on the receiving end of care, I very much understand the importance of getting what's important to you across, whether it's a mental health issue, planning pregnancy, worrying about glucose levels. Everybody with diabetes has got specific things that they are worried about. And as healthcare professionals, it's our job to create the space where they're safe coming into the room and voicing those concerns. Now, I'm aware that in some healthcare professional interactions, that space isn't always given. And actually, it's about thinking, what can we do if that space isn't given to empower the person with diabetes to get their agenda across?
Are there things that you wish people felt more able to ask? And what's interesting about you is you were saying to me earlier on that actually you went into this area because you had type 1 diabetes, and so you wanted to become a specialist, which is incredible. I didn't know that. But are there questions that you wish people felt more able to ask?
So I think things like mental health for men, erectile dysfunction, these sort of things, people are less comfortable discussing sometimes. And often it's about how we as healthcare professionals frame the discussion. So, for example, quite often men with diabetes get erectile dysfunction. Is that something you've had issues with? Rather than, putting it across as a direct question. Or sometimes people with diabetes struggle with anxiety. Have you had any experience with that? To try and normalise and make people realise. I've got the perspective that I see the full range of what people experience with diabetes. Whereas when you live with diabetes, you don't understand that you feel like you're the only person having those issues.
Right.
So it's opening up the space to be able to open the door to have that conversation.
Thank you. And Catherine, I'm just going to include you in this as well. So one of our viewers submitted a question which was, I've been told that I'm doing well, but I still find it hard, and sometimes I feel dismissed. So do you have any suggestions for how to make things feel a little bit less stressful when it comes to staying healthy?
For me personally, I think it's remembering that the big 4 carbs, which is the rice, the potatoes, the pasta and the bread, you need to cut that down in your diet. And also that during the adverts I get up and do things in the house, and the kitchen floor is a dance floor, and I will happily sashay across it.
Oh, I love the idea of that. And is that for a health reason, or just because you love to dance across the kitchen floor?
Well, I think it helps you mentally.
Yeah.
Because it's uplifting. And obviously you're keeping yourself moving.
Yes.
And you're keeping your levels.
I see, to just try and keep your glucose levels consistent as well.
Yes.
Interesting. And have you ever felt in consultations a little bit dismissed at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a very definitive yes, I have. Sue, if I can ask you as well, another question that's come in. I've always struggled to advocate for myself during appointments. Are there any phrases or approaches that could help me express myself more clearly? What would your advice be on that?
Yeah, and I think it's such a good question. And as healthcare professionals from our side, we're just running clinics and, life can be stressful as well. But it's remembering that the person coming to see us equally has that time, and you don't know what sort of day they've had. So when people come in, I think when you ask the question to Emma about what do you wish people would say more, it's if people are really anxious before they come in, it's to say, I'm going to be anxious in this, which means I may not take away everything. Can we just double check that I'm understanding what you're saying, so that the person feels that the conversation with the healthcare professional is an equal. So if the healthcare professional uses a word or a phrase, just saying, can I just be clear, this is what I'm hearing from what you're saying? Because I think we all use terminology without double checking that the person understands that phrase the same way that we're meaning it.
So do you think, are you saying that actually to an extent it's having the confidence to be able to say to the professional, have I understood this correctly?
Yes.
I mean, I just wonder whether there's a bit of anxiety for people that have diabetes around, I shouldn't be sort of hassling my healthcare professional and, I'm wasting their time. I mean, did you feel that at all, Catherine?
Yes, I did. And I think it's ingrained into a lot of people, particularly my age, that the doctor's time is precious.
Yes.
And I really think we need to change our attitude, and that I also think it's good to take notes into your consultation so that your mind doesn't go blank.
Yeah.
And you can stick to those points and you don't end up sort of just deviating onto another subject.
Yes, yeah, which is easily done. And again, I mean, for you, Daniel, have you ever had that experience where you've gone into a consultation and you're anxious and thinking, I can't waste this person's time, and then your mind goes blank?
Yeah, definitely, and I agree with what Catherine said there. And in particular, when I was much younger, I didn't have the confidence to push back on what my consultant was saying to me. And I've been brought up to believe the doctor knows best, so you shouldn't question anything. And it's only through advocacy and learning more about the condition, learning more about what I'm entitled to, that empowered me to push back on some things that were being said to me. But you can go to a consultation, and obviously you mentioned it earlier, and just take away one word, and it could be a positive consultation, but that one negative word is what sticks with you and goes around your mind for the next 3 months or until your next appointment.
That's exactly it. Your mind is going to focus on the negative, isn't it, rather than the positive stuff that you've taken away. I'm going to come to you with another question in a second, actually, but I do want to just go back to you, Emma, and the fact that you do have type 1 diabetes and you're a consultant as well. So this is a bit of a kind of like conflict between you of being patient and doctor. So do you recognise what Daniel and Catherine are saying, which is, hang on a minute, sometimes you can be slightly in awe of your doctor and then not take the information in? I mean, do you ever struggle with that yourself?
Absolutely, and I think the big challenge that we have is that virtually everybody living with diabetes has had moments, interactions with healthcare professionals where they felt judged, they felt like they're constantly being given a list of things to do. And actually, something I try and do quite often is when things are going well, just saying, you're doing amazingly, there's nothing to do here. Because I think you constantly feel you're never doing well enough with your diabetes.
And how often do you hear that as a patient? Do you hear that a lot, that actually you're doing well? Well done.
Yes, because I get the opportunity to choose the healthcare professionals that I know I want to work with. But most people living with diabetes don't have that opportunity. And it is actually the relationship you have with your healthcare professional is really important. If you're seeing somebody and time again, you're not feeling heard, you're feeling judged, you're having a negative experience, think about switching out, because this is your health. It's a lifelong condition. Find a way that works for you. And actually, if you don't, this is a lifelong relationship with that healthcare professional. If it doesn't work for you, find somebody else that will.
I don't think any of us would even think about that. I think that's a really important bit of information, that if you're not happy with your consultant, switch it out.
Yeah, that's a lifelong relationship potentially. If it's not working, fix it.
Wow. Thank you for that. So that's really, really insightful. Daniel, I promised to come back to you. We have had a question in, which is, I want to talk about my mental health during consultations, but I'm not sure how to bring it up. What's the best way to start that conversation? Now, this touches on something that we don't always hear enough about, which is obviously the mental health aspect that's associated with diabetes. What's worked for you?
So for me, when it comes to talking about my mental health or even my emotional health when it comes to living with type 1 with my consultant, it would be preparing for the consultation. And kind of, as Catherine said earlier, that preparation is key. So even if you have 2 or 3 bullet points that you want to discuss, make sure that you do discuss those. And I think even living with type 1 diabetes or diabetes in general, we can focus a lot on the physical side, but not on that mental and emotional side. And for me personally, that's been my biggest challenge, has been that mental and emotional side. So I completely understand where the person's coming from. And a bit what Emma said as well earlier, that sometimes diabetes can tell you you're not doing well. And that voice in your head can just go over and over and over again because it's just you in those moments. So looking after your mental well-being is important, and preparing to have those conversations is key as well.
And what have you done to look after your own mental health and well-being?
Relating to my...
to diabetes.
So for me, what worked particularly well was around the numbers. So I know we'll touch on it later, but my HbA1c, or the numbers that were coming, that I was getting from my glucose levels, and not attaching emotion to those numbers, rather just viewing it as data of what I needed to do next, because I was attaching my self-worth and my emotion to those numbers, rating myself as good or bad, when actually it's just data telling me what I need to do next, what decisions I need to make. And that's much easier said than done, but taking that emotional side out of it has been key for me. But it's easier said than done.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much, panel, so far. We are going to move on now to our next section, which focuses on the small habits, tools or approaches that can make consultations more productive, both for people living with diabetes and for the professionals who support them. A good consultation often starts before you even walk through the door. We've touched on that already. So, Emma, I'm going to put you in the hot seat again and direct our very first question to you. So, our audience member asks, is it worth writing out on paper my questions for the consultant? I think we have touched on this a little bit. But is it worth writing out on paper my questions for the consultant? The meetings are so quick that they fly through everything. What would you say?
Absolutely. Whether it's on a bit of paper, whether it's on your phone, but actually above and beyond that, it's start thinking about that consultation way in advance. If you're only thinking about what you want to discuss in the waiting room, it's too late.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, resonate with a lot of people with diabetes. You get on with your life and diabetes is always there, but you don't actually take the time out to reflect about what's actually important to me, what are the issues I'm having. And that's what the consultation's for. And actually, the more thinking you do about that in advance, the more you're going to get out of your consultation. So I'd say at least a week before, start thinking, what am I worried about? What are the things that are important to me? What do I really need to get out of that consultation? And go in. And as I said earlier, you should be given the opportunity at the start of the consultation to get your agenda across. If that doesn't happen, that bit of paper or that note in your phone is your safety key to get to the point where the things that really matter are definitely covered.
Absolutely. And is this something that Daniel and Catherine, you do, that before you go into your consultation, have you written those questions down that you want to ask?
I do now, yes.
Yeah, so you're well prepared.
Yeah, so if there's something key that I want to discuss, that will be what I'm going to talk about.
Fantastic. So again, I think that the message here then is absolutely prepare. I guess use the consultation well. So, because how long is a consultation normally?
So that's another
It's a whole other, other session.
So that varies hugely across the country. In my clinics, I have 30 minutes, and even in that, I struggle to fit everything in. But I know there are some services that are only 15 minutes.
Oh, really?
And one thing actually I'd say to people living with diabetes, if you're coming to see a specialist like me, a consultant in diabetes, if you've already gone to your GP, had your foot checked, your blood pressure checked, your blood's done, and all of that's done, then that is great, because it means that half hour I've got with you is purely about what's going on in your life and what I do to support you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've not had those things done, you've then got the most senior form of diabetes specialist spending time checking feet, doing bloods and doing all the other bits, and that's taking away from the time we've got to discuss mental health and all the other things.
Absolutely. OK, thank you for that, Emma. Catherine, I'm just going to address you with this next question, which is somebody has asked us, due to short appointment times, what can I do to not feel like I'm having a rushed consultation? How can I best manage the time? What would you say?
The notes, take your notes in, stay calm.
Yeah.
And for me personally, the game changer has been going on to a Freestyle Libre 2 device plus, because I use it because it has a notes facility. So I put notes down on my phone as I go, and it gives me all my stats. So my nurse and my diabetic nurse also have the ability, because I've signed up and let them have it on their computers. So half the consultation's done before I've even sat down in the chair.
Oh, really? OK, that is very useful. So you're using actually technology to assist in those consultations as well. Thank you for that. So, Sue, I'm going to ask you, how do you use, this is a question that people ask quite a lot, how do you use the glucose graphs to adjust treatment plans, and what do your patients find helpful when it comes to discussing their glucose data? It's quite a mouthful, that.
It is, OK, a big subject. So when somebody comes in with all of their graphs, first of all, what I'm trying to do is understand their understanding of the graphs. Because, I can look at these and I can understand what may have caused a particular pattern to occur, but I don't know the actual cause. So that, for me, every part of the graph would just be the opening of a conversation to try and find from the person. So to me, it's about exploring and using it to explore rather than to judge or assume assume that something must have happened because we see a particular pattern in the graph. For me, disappointingly, sometimes people don't look at the graphs. I find quite often people just move forward with their diabetes and you know, if they're having a hypo, they'll treat the hypo, they'll carry on. If they know they're going somewhere and it's a bit high, they might do something about that and alter something else, maybe be a bit more active. I feel my role is to help them sit down and then start to reflect to see if there are any recurring themes that we can then try and do something about to make sure that that doesn't keep happening.
So again, for you, you're saying, you know, very clear information, very clear discussion about this, just in terms of helping the management of those graphs.
Because, you know, we have evidence to suggest what might be the cause of a particular pattern in a graph.
And what sort of thing might that be?
So it may be down to the time, you know, if we're seeing a particular pattern after meal times, it could be about, is the person pre-bolusing for that meal? Are they giving their insulin with a gap between that and food? Is it the impact of the food, the impact of exercise on a graph, and where within the graph we might be finding deviations away from the levels that we want people to be. And so I can understand the likely causes, but I don't understand in each person's individual situation whether that was the cause.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just a place to open a conversation, because the answer is in the person with the condition, and it's my role to try and find out, okay, is there anything that we can then make improvements to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Daniel, you have a lot of experience when it comes to these consultations. We know that. What is your number one tip for making consultations more productive as far as you're concerned?
I feel like I'm going to be a bit of a broken record.
Oh, yeah. But that's a good thing.
It is the preparation and being prepared to know what you actually want to discuss and what you want to get out of that consultation, and understanding that it's your time as much as it is your consultant's time as well. So for me, it is the preparation and having that clear idea about what you want, what is important to you, and what is important to you managing your diabetes as you go into that consultation.
I think that's a really good point to say, look, this is actually, it's your time. You know, and much as the consultant's time is very precious, it's your time in terms of understanding your health and managing this condition. So I hear what you're saying, that we may be a broken record, but it's important to say preparation is key, isn't it? Because ultimately this is your health and your time.
Yeah.
Okay, that is lovely. Does anybody else want to add any more to that?
May I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I get my bloods done, so they take your bloods. I always go onto the NHS app and check what all my readings are, and you have an understanding using the semicircular graph that tells you where you are on it with your diabetes readings. And for me, you're already going in with a load of information that you fully understand, once again with your notes, rather than starting the consultation by the nurse or doctor having to go through all the readings with you.
That's interesting, I think, what you're saying there, Catherine. So in a sense, you're saying, look, take more control over your health when you go into that consultation, rather than just handing over the control to the consultant. You're going in there as a patient going, I'm in charge of my data. I know what's going on with my bloods and my condition, and I'm going to lead this in a way.
Yes.
And would you agree with that then?
Totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. Because if somebody comes in already having taken the effort to find out the results, having had the test in the first place, then finding out what the results are before they come to see me, that tells me exactly where they are with their diabetes. And so the conversation could carry on a completely different level. If somebody's coming completely unaware or doesn't even know the implications of any of the tests that they've had done, then the conversation has to take a different
You
a
sort of
different
have to
tax.
start from the beginning, don't you, really,
Yeah.
if somebody isn't aware of the implications.
So I think
of
it's a
said tax.
very powerful message to your healthcare professional if you have taken the time to find out what the results are, not just have the test, but find out what the results are before you come. That's a very powerful message.
And when you say that's a very powerful message to your consultant, what in terms of actually this person knows what they're doing, they're serious about this, and they're taking control.
Yeah, and it is their condition. I mean, I see my role as I'm just part of somebody's journey. People may not stay in the area, but they live with that condition and will live with that condition, most likely for life.
Yeah.
And my role is very fleeting in the middle of that, and I'm very aware of that.
OK, we are going to move on to our next section, and I'm pleased about this because actually, Catherine, you mentioned something earlier on in terms of language, and I think you said the word, did you say basal or...?
No.
There was definitely some medical language that was used. Was it used, though?
It's probably me.
OK, well, I'm pleased that you did that because we are going to turn to the language used in consultations. Medical language can sometimes be a little bit confusing for those of us not working in medicine. So in this section, we'll go over all of the words and phrases that you've sent in that often come up in consultations that you're not totally sure about. So to get through as many as possible, short answers, please, panellists. So let's start with question 1. OK. How do I interpret my HbA1c results? What does it really tell me over what period? And what's a realistic target? OK, there's quite a lot of information there. So, Emma, could you help to explain this one, please?
Yep, so HbA1c is a blood test that you get when we typically do it every 3 months, sometimes larger gaps. It's a measure of how much glucose is stuck onto your blood cells, and the higher your glucose, the more sticks on, the higher the number. And you're aiming for a level of 48 if you've got type 1 diabetes or type 2 on one therapy, or maybe 53 if you're on additional therapies.
And so that is a realistic target, but over what period?
Not really.
OK.
So those are the national targets, but it should be individualised. If you've got an HbA1c of 100, there's no point in this discussion you getting to 48. And again, this is about you coming in, being in control of the consultation. Where are you and what are you aiming for? You decide.
Now, that is news to my ears, I have to say. So you're saying, look, to an extent, just ignore those national average targets. This is about you and your HbA1c.
Well, 1 in 10 people with type 1 will get to an HbA1c of 48. 90% aren't there. So it's not realistic to say that everybody should be there. It's about where are you now and what can we do to support you to get closer to that target, and what do you want to work towards next?
And is that something you recognise, Daniel,
Yeah.
with type 1?
I found that when I was trying to fit in these really tight parameters, we spoke about mental health earlier.
Yeah.
My mental health declined so much, and that's where a lot of the judgment came in from myself, feeling, oh, you're not good enough because you can't reach these figures. But then it was taking a step back and, like what Emma said, realising that my numbers and my data was individual to me.
Yeah.
And then working from where I was to where I wanted to be, and where I was many years ago compared to where I am now. There's been a huge improvement. But also, if I were just to be at that point and not think that this was possible again, because I would be focusing on those targets,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have made it to where I am now. So Emma's completely right.
I think that's a really liberating message, isn't it? Is to say, actually, work within your individual,
What
target.
works for you?
Exactly. It's fascinating. Thank you for that. OK. Next, question 2. What are my GI scales and values, and how should I be using that information to help manage my diabetes? And Sue, I am going to fling this one over to you. Do you talk about the glycemic index a lot in your appointments, and how do you keep the explanation simple?
Right. So again, I don't discuss GI with everybody, glycemic index, because a lot of people don't understand glycemic index, or don't use glycemic index. So glycemic index is taking every single individual food and looking at how it affects your blood glucose level.
Yes.
So how quickly does it break down, and how quickly will it then, and for how long will it affect your blood sugar? The challenge with glycemic index is it takes every single food individually. Well, we don't eat foods in a very individual way, and you can manipulate the effect of a particular food on what it's going to do to your glucose level if you combine it.
I see.
So carbohydrates, if you combine them with proteins and fats, you will change the effect. So if people just get hung up on glycemic index, then I tend to have a wider conversation about meal makeup. And
That is so. To an extent, then the GI load of foods can be unhelpful. You're
misleading.
saying so it is misleading, because I've always become quite obsessed about
it can
glycemic index.
But we don't eat foods in there.
Of course we don't.
No.
Of course you don't. Okay, thank you for explaining that. That's been very helpful to me, actually. Okay, moving on to question number 3. I was told I don't need a pump because my control is too good. It feels like I'm being penalised for doing well. Why is that? Now, Emma, again, I'm going to throw this question to you. It's a really interesting question from somebody who's, I guess, clearly feeling a little bit penalised and targeted and being told that they're sort of being too good. What would you say to somebody who's maybe heard that in a consultation?
So I would say I absolutely hear you and get you. Getting down to, HbA1cs that are too good for a pump is extremely hard work, and it does feel like people are penalised. The reality is the NHS has limited resources, and they take the resources for insulin pumps and closed-loop systems and give them to the people most in need. So at the moment, hybrid closed-loop priority groups are children and young adults. And again, if you're in your 40s and you had a child, you'd probably want your child to have it before you. So I think we get that. For women that are pregnant and planning pregnancy, because glucose control really affects the development of the fetus. And we'll also be looking at people with disabling hypoglycemia. So the one thing I would say is actually let's go through those other things and see if one of those categories fits. Because disabling hypoglycemia as a category doesn't mean falling over and being unconscious with low glucose. It means hypos which are persistent, recurrent, anxiety-provoking, and have a negative impact on quality of life. And actually, when you start to unpick that in a consultation, you can find that some people that thought they didn't meet the criteria actually do when you start going through the detail of that.
That is interesting. I mean, but how do you feel about the language that's being used here? That effectively, that this person's saying, I feel like I'm being penalised. I'm being told that I'm sort of too good. So how do you feel about? I mean, have any of you experienced this in consultations of being told that you're doing this too well? You don't need any further help.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because I know Daniel said earlier, we can use a lot of throwaway words that are very negative, and you take away those negative connotations. And then here, when it comes to resources, because we all know the beauty and the benefit of these new systems, but because the finances aren't there for everybody to have them, we then make the opposite judgments and then claim that people are too well controlled. It's and I can totally appreciate, because we hear it in clinic all of the time. It really is the one thing that is now really driving people and anger, and also then affecting mental health, because it's like, well, I've worked hard and now I still can't get the best therapy that we have to offer at the moment.
We've just got time. I'm going to be, before we move on to our fourth section, I'm going to just squeeze in a very quick question, because we were talking about language and medicine. So, Emma or Sue, can you clarify the difference between basal and bolus?
Yeah, extremely quickly.
Yes.
Your basal insulin is the insulin that's very long lasting and it lasts throughout the day and keeps your glucose level steady. Your bolus insulin is the one you take before food that controls the peak in your glucose, in very simple terms.
You know this, don't you, Daniel? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Okay, so it's time for the last set of questions our audience submitted ahead of this evening. These ones really focus on what makes consultations feel truly useful, not just clinically, but emotionally and personally too. I know that we have touched on this already, but we're going to do a bit more of a deep dive into this now. So, The first one is, what can I bring or do ahead of time to make the most of my consultation? I know that we've touched on bringing the questions before you come in, but Sue, in your experience, what kinds of preparation help to make a consultation more focused and productive and positive, I guess, for the patient?
So again, it comes down to pre-thinking about the appointment. So asking somebody to put a bit of thought into it. But then the things that I particularly ask them to do, and I think it sort of carries on from what Emma said as to what is really worrying me. But if somebody is on technology and we're going to be looking at graphs and things, it's making a list of what have you tried? Has it given you the outcome that you were wanting or expecting? And if not, just make some notes about that, because otherwise I will come in and look at data with you and say, you know, if there's a particular thing that's worrying you, I might ask you, well, what happened a week ago last Sunday? It's like, well, I can't even remember what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So if you have some notes about things that you have tried to put into place, you think you've made the right decision, but actually you still haven't had the outcome that you want, just make a note of it so that we can aim the conversation at that point.
Okay, so be specific, make notes, be prepared. And I mean, Catherine, I know that again, you have touched on this throughout this discussion, but just give us some tips of anything else that you've learned to do ahead of time that's made a real difference for you in your appointments.
Because I now have the Freestyle Libre 2, I find that I'm putting the notes in real time, and because the information comes back in real time, I can sit there and I can think, that didn't work. That's what's tipped me over into high score, and I need to get it down and what I can do about it. But not after 6 months. You've got it there and then, and I use the note capacity that the machine has to put your notes in.
So actually that bit of tech is a game changer, isn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely.
What did you do before you had that technology?
Before?
Yeah.
I got it because I was on insulin and I was on oral medication. My bloods went up to 67 and I was basically told I would have to go on to a stronger dose of insulin and a different type. And my diabetic nurse said, for a fortnight, can we try Freestyle Libre 2? Would I be willing? Would I be willing to share the information with them? And my nurse said, actually, I have 2. And they said, will you do it for a month before we put you onto the insulin? And I said, sign me up, Joe. So there and then I got fitted with one, went home, had a cheese scone. I knew it wouldn't be the best, but it was horrific. I really don't eat scones now. It was absolutely...
Because you could see immediately from the data that your sugar spiked?
Yes.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Immediately. And after the month, I went back after the fortnight and my practice nurse fitted the second one and we talked through the last fortnight. And at the end of the month, they simply said, because I changed so many of my ways, that they weren't going to put me onto the other insulin. I have now been removed from all insulins, and my bloods are now, my latest a couple of weeks ago, where instead of 67 was 54, all because of the tech.
Because you were willing to change and to the tech. That is extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Thank you. So, very, very quickly, before we move on to the live questions, I'm going to throw this to Emma super quick. What kind of feedback from people living with diabetes has shaped the way that you approach your consultations?
So it's reflecting more on the near misses. So one consultation I'll never forget was somebody who came in, again, looking at their data, looking at their things had deteriorated, and you think, well, what's going on? And actually they came in and very quickly they started talking about the fact their dad had died very recently. And actually the whole consultation became about supporting them through a horrendous life circumstance, we never even looked at the glucose data. And for me, that learning point is don't delve into the glucose and the HbA1c and all this sort of stuff at the first thing in the consultation, because there's bigger things that might be happening in that person's life, and actually they're in survival mode, not let's have the best glucose levels in that moment of time.
That is interesting to hear, that you're basically saying that as a consultant, as a medic, you're having to pivot and adapt rather than just focus solely on, let's just look at your bloods.
Yeah. And if you don't pivot and adapt, that person's going to leave that consultation just thinking, what on earth is that all about?
Well, I have to say, I mean, you said it earlier on that if you're not happy with your consultant, move. Okay, so next question. Actually, Daniel, I'm going to ask you this one. Have you ever given feedback to a healthcare professional that led to a more positive experience for you?
Yes, I have. So it partly comes off the back of what Emma has just said. So my dad recently passed away, or over a year or so ago. And in my next consultation, I was speaking to my consultant and just dived into the numbers. And it was only after reading the letter on the system and seeing that I was actually going through a major life event, that changed. And then we spoke about that, and it was from that consultation. I would like to think it's changed kind of what he does going forward, but in terms of just having that conversation of, well, yes, let's speak about me first and find out what's going on, or having that conversation about life makes a big difference. But that's not the first time I've had a conversation with a healthcare professional about that. It's just feeling confident enough to say, actually, this is what's going on in my life.
I mean, I have to say, that kind of seems really obvious, though, doesn't it? To start a consultation with just the human aspect of going, how are you?
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? Has anything changed?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary to me that you've only really recently kind of experienced that.
Yeah, I interact with quite a few different services, and there's one service that is really great, and from the start I've been seen as Daniel the person, and that made talking about my dad passing away so much easier with them, because I knew there wasn't any judgment. It was kind of what Sue said earlier about just seeing themselves as, I'm here to help you on your journey, and that made such a big difference of knowing in the back of my mind that, okay, I wasn't where I needed to be in terms of that condition, but just speaking to them, and they were like, we understand.
Yeah.
And that makes such a big difference for us as people living with chronic conditions and just people living with diabetes.
I'm sort of getting the impression and the message from this conversation that actually not having any judgment in the consultations and in life in general, but particularly in consultations, is so important. Is that right, Catherine, would you say? Just
definitely.
not to be judged, to be seen as a whole person.
Definitely.
Okay, so our next question. How has using technology helped you feel more confident or better prepared for consultations? Now, Catherine, you have beautifully demonstrated how actually using your tech has been a game changer for you. But Daniel, I'm going to throw it back to you, because I did see you nodding earlier on when Catherine was talking about that. You use the Freestyle Libre 2 Plus sensor and the Freestyle Libre Link app. Has having access to your own data, a bit like Catherine really, changed the way that you prepare for your appointments?
Yeah, so it gives me the opportunity to look at where, say, my timing range has been, whether it be over the past 30 or 60 days or whatever. And if there's a target that I want to work towards, then I know where I am at now, and then having a conversation of where I want to be, and even outside of just consultations, I know that's what we're talking about, but daily life, or even if it's doing exercise, so I like to run, so it's taking the information there and helping me with my running as well. So yeah.
So it's helping you to plan better.
Yeah.
And you like the immediacy of the
Yes.
data as well.
Yeah, and then also having that ability to reflect and review the data. And sometimes it's a small thing as being able to sleep at night better, because I have the comfort and security of having the alarms on the system, knowing that rather than rely on my body to wake me up if I'm having a hypo, I've got the alarms there to wake me up if I'm going too low. And that's a small thing, but for people living with diabetes, it's a big thing.
But that's huge. That is
Yeah.
huge, isn't it? Sort of having that security blanket and that comfort, as you say, and the security, as you rightly say, of going, do you know what? I don't have to just rely on my body. I've got a backup system that's going to help me. So again, like Catherine, that's been a game changer for you.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very interesting. Okay, Sue, how do you use that kind of data in practice?
Yeah.
And does it help you to guide your decisions?
I would say from a person's perspective and from a healthcare professional's perspective, in all of the decades that I've been looking after diabetes, I truly believe this technology trumps everything else in terms of changing people's lives, because it is that immediate feedback. And it's not just knowing what your glucose is, it's knowing where it's heading. That is, to me, what has made the biggest difference, certainly when I speak to people and when I help people. And then we look at that data, and that there are lots of tools that we can use, going back to maybe using a bit of glycemic index and understanding that better, looking at timing of giving your bolus before your meal, or making sure that you've given your basal that day. All of those things, for me, are conversation starters to try and improve the graphs that we're seeing, to get somebody to understand even better the data that they're seeing. Because like I say, in my experience, a lot of people look at it and move forward each day because your days are going forward. And then when I have a consultation, we're looking at that data and helping people reflect. If they're not used to looking back to find particular patterns, that I can then give them some tools to make some changes.
So, I mean, for you, you're saying that this technology has just made an extraordinary difference.
And it's to see the difference in people. The amount of times people say, I have never understood my diabetes before. And I think I've been trying for years to help you with that one. But having this technology, and it's because exactly what you said, you can see real time the impact of having a cheese scone. That's helped you make a difference.
Oh, yes.
I love that. No one's going to eat a cheese scone ever again, Catherine. And is this something you can identify with as well, Emma, in terms of the data in your clinical practice?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when Freestyle Libre first came out, healthcare professionals were a bit freaked out. We don't know what we're doing here. We're out of our depth. But I was more, living with diabetes, I'd already seen for myself, this is an educational tool.
Yes.
People are coming back to clinic, having a better understanding of their diabetes than they've ever had in the past. This is not something for us to be fearful of, it's something for us to embrace. And I think we're at that point now where healthcare professionals very much see the benefits. And it's become part of standard care, certainly in type 1 diabetes. Not quite in type 2 diabetes, but I suspect that day will come in the future.
And again, it is medics, it's stuff that you've talked about, which is encouraging people to take control of their health. Okay, thank you. So let's just have our final question actually for this section very, very quickly. What are the moments where people feel heard, understood and supported? And how can we create more of those moments? So that's a question that's come in from somebody. How can we create more of those moments in consultations where somebody actually feels heard, understood and supported? Emma.
We've been talking about this all night, really it reflects the having time to get your agenda across, having techniques such as making notes to make sure that you've got the opportunity to hand it over and be heard. And for us healthcare professionals, we need to get better at giving the space to listen and making sure that people leave the room feeling heard and feeling that we've addressed their issues.
Fabulous. We've come to the end of section 4 and we have had a fantastic range of questions sent in ahead of this event. So thank you for sending them in. And lots more have come in live tonight as well. So let's dive straight into those. Are you ready, gang?
Yes.
Here we go. Right. So this is going to be to Emma and to Sue. And the question is, I'm a practice nurse. What can I do to best start an appointment to invite questions or a conversation in a streamlined, patient-led way?
So one of my go-to starters is, so I can see you've had diabetes for so many years. How's it been? Talk me through it. And it just allows people to reflect. what are the highs, the lows, and it just starts a conversation and allows them to then lead into what are the most immediate issues that they want to be addressing. Just giving them space to talk.
So you're sort of saying start from the beginning, really.
Yeah,
Have a little
yeah.
bit of a history take. Talk to me
Yeah.
about, when did this start? How have you managed it? Tell me about your life.
Yeah,
Okay, so again, just a bit more human.
exactly.
What would you say, Sue?
And I think certainly because I think the question came from a practice nurse, I
Yes,
believe.
it did.
Quite often they know their people because they have been there through most of their life, and they probably know all of their family members as well.
Yes.
So the conversation starter can sometimes be a wee bit different for them because they probably already know the person. So it might be just about opening up and, since we last met, what have been the highlights? What have been the good things? And because otherwise I find people always tend to go in and feel that the conversation is, things are never good enough. If they
Yes.
achieve a number, we could go for a better number. It's all about numbers. So try and direct the conversation away from that and maybe ask the person, since your last appointment, what's gone really well?
Yeah.
What's the best thing mean?
Yeah, that is a really good point. Focusing on what's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's happened to you that we can celebrate.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. A question for Daniel. Is there another way than physical exercise to lower your glucose level?
In terms of, I guess my go-to answer would be insulin, but I guess I'm a bit stumped by the question. Is it? I would, as type. I don't know.
Well,
Is there?
let's
am I?
fling it out to the panel.
Yeah.
Any other tips in terms of lowering your glucose levels other than physical exercise? Any other sort of lifestyle tips, I suppose?
Yeah, so it doesn't need to actually be exercise. Just standing up versus sitting can actually make quite a big difference to your
Really?
glucose levels. Yep, and small amounts of movement. I think many of us are stuck in jobs where we sit for many hours at a time. If you
Yes.
can just make the effort to stand up and move around a little, it doesn't need to be a run on a treadmill or whatever. That will make a difference to your glucose
Did
levels.
you know that, Catherine? Just standing up and moving about a bit. Mind you dance in the kitchen. Of course you know that.
She's all over it.
It's for me, it's those adverts. Joe, they've repeated throughout the programme, Joe, I can sit on the sofa or I can get up, I can go in the kitchen and I can actually do something. And I know what it does to my readings.
Yeah.
Just because, and they're on for so long, just to get up and, yes.
I never knew that. That's a really great tip. Thank you for that. OK, for the whole panel, can the panel give their opinion on how powerful a tool is fasting in controlling diabetes? Interesting one. Anybody got an opinion about is fasting a powerful tool?
So, I'll take this first. I'll give it a go. There is lots of evidence and support for these extended fasting periods. So maybe people will fast for 16 hours and eat in a smaller window. I think if you're unsure of what you're doing with that, it would be worth having that discussion with your healthcare professional. And I'm thinking particularly about then the impact of, are you confident enough in when you're taking your medications, your insulin, and the impact? Because if you suddenly went on a very extended fast period, but you were still taking medications that could lower your blood glucose over a long period of time, you might run into issues.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to try any form of changing diet to quite an extreme level, whether that's taking out and going to a very low carbohydrate diet or a very low calorie diet, or thinking purely about glycemic index, always discuss it if you are unsure.
Absolutely. That seems like a very important tip, that before you go on an extended fasting diet, then discuss it first, for sure. Emma, we've got one in, which is, what is glucose variability and is there a good score for it?
Yeah, so that's quite a complicated question in a way, because there's lots of ways of measuring glucose variability. But in a simple terms, it's a measure of how much your glucose goes up and down.
OK.
And on the Libre reports, there's something called the CV, the coefficient of variation. It's meant to be less than 36%. Actually, it's just a marker of hypo risk. So you're better looking at your time below range, which is your time in hypoglycemia, because that's the bit that really matters in the consultation. So I don't know if you would agree with that.
Totally agree with that. I think, again, the minute we put back in abbreviations, then it just blows people's minds. And what does that mean? 36% to people. You know, it's yet another number that we're trying to chase without any clear understanding what it is. What we're trying to do is reduce the rise and fall in glucose and to keep people more level across the day.
Got you. So less focus on numbers, more, I think it's what you were saying earlier on as well, Daniel, about just individualisation, isn't it, of going, let's just try and stop those spikes so much for you. Thank you for explaining that. I've got another one to throw to you, which is quite full on. So what are the most effective ways for people with type 1 diabetes to shift consultations away from compliance checks toward collaborative problem solving, especially when we have complex challenges? That sounds to me like a nurse or a medic that's written that, possibly. What would you say, Sue and Emma?
So I think what we said earlier, get their care processes done
Yep.
separately with your practice nurse, so that when you're coming for your specialist appointment, it's about discussing whatever you need to, whether it's planning pregnancy, hybrid closed loop. Make the most of that time, be planned, and get in the driving seat. If the consultant doesn't give you the opportunity to get your messages across, say to them, actually, there's my bit of paper, or can you walk me through the answers to that, so that you force them to take you where you want it to be.
Okay. Thank you for beautifully summarising on that and compliance checks. And that, again, I think you're saying is collaborative problem solving between client and consultant. Thank you for that. This is a great question that's come in. Is it possible to reverse type 2 diabetes? I keep hearing mixed opinions. What are we saying?
Yes, it absolutely is.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, fill us in.
Now, again, this is evidence probably from the last decade. So if people have had their diabetes a very long time, then for many years they will have been told, once you have type 2 diabetes, it is relentless, it is progressive, and there is nothing you can do about it. However, a study has shown, it's called the DIRECT study, and it is absolutely shown that with weight loss and shifting the fat out of the pancreas and liver, but with enough weight loss, you can absolutely put your type 2 diabetes into remission.
I feel like that we've ended on a fabulous note there. That is fascinating to hear, Sue. Thank you, because I wasn't sure whether you could. So that is a great bit of hopeful advice to end on. Thank you. That is all we have time for tonight. A huge thank you to our brilliant panel, Dr. Emma Wilmot, Sue Down, Daniel Newman, and of course Catherine Robinson. And thank you to all of you at home for joining us, sharing your questions and being part of such an open and empowering conversation. Before we go though, panel, we have one final question for each of them. The challenge is to answer in one sentence because we've got a couple of minutes to go before we finish. So here we go. What's one takeaway or insight from tonight's discussion that you think could help make consultations more effective for everybody involved? OK, go. Emma.
It's your diabetes, it's your consultation. Take control of it.
Sue.
Healthcare professionals should realise that they are just part of the journey.
Love that. Daniel.
Always remember that you're a team. You should be working together with your consultant.
Again, collaboration. And finally, you have the final word, Catherine. What would you say?
If you don't take your note and you don't take control, it is your diabetes, it is your consultation, as Daniel says. It's up to you.
And stay off those cheese scones.
And stay off the cheese
That's what I'm
scone.
going to say. That is it. Thank you again for joining. And whether you're living with diabetes or supporting those who do, we hope you're walking away with not just answers, but also, I hope, some confidence. So take care and we'll see you next time.